My father and I didn't speak for 31 years. We lived 11 minutes apart the whole time. And when he finally called me, on a Tuesday afternoon in April, I stood in my own driveway and watched a number I still knew by heart light up a phone I was holding in my hand, and I did not answer it. He died 2 days later. He left a voicemail, 2 minutes and 11 seconds long. It sat in my phone for 5 weeks because I couldn't make my thumb touch the play button, and when I finally did, sitting right here on this porch, those 2 minutes and 11 seconds ended a war that had eaten a third of my life. I've listened to it by now several hundred times. I could recite it to you cold. And before this evening's over, I will. So settle in, friend, and stay close to the light, because this one's about the most expensive thing a man can own, which is being right. My name is Mike. I'm 64 years old. I've put roofs on houses in this county since I was 14, and so did my father, and therein, as they say, hangs the tale. My father's name was Stan Sullivan, and if you lived within 30 miles of here any time in the last 60 years, you slept under his work, or under work done by men he trained, which he'd have told you was the same thing on a good crew and worse on a bad one. Sullivan Roofing. The sign was red and white and the trucks were red, and my father stood 6'2" in boots he resoled instead of replaced, and he had a saying he wore smooth as a pocket knife. A roof is a promise, Mikey. Anybody can keep a promise on a sunny day. Roofs are for the other days. He was born in 1937, which tells you most of what you need to know. Depression baby, Army duty in Korea just after the shooting stopped, and he came home and apprenticed under a man named Kowalczyk who paid him in silver dollars and taught him slate, real slate, which is roofing the way violin making is carpentry. By the time I came along in 1962, the sign was up, the trucks were red, and my father was already a kind of weather in this county. Builders scheduled around him. Ministers flattered him. When the tornado skipped through in 71, he tarped 40 roofs in 9 days, and I know because I rode in the truck, 9 years old, handing up rope. I want to be fair to him tonight, fairer than I managed for 31 years, so I'll tell you the good plain truth about growing up Big Stan's boy. It was a kingdom, friend. It smelled like cut cedar and hot tar and thermos coffee, and it ran on codes as strict as any church. You showed up before the sun. You never stepped on a man's cut line. You did the flashing right even where nobody could see it, especially where nobody could see it because, and here's another pocket knife saying, the leak always starts where you were sure it wouldn't. I can give you my first day up, if you want to know what an education in that kingdom felt like. 14 years old, June, a ranch house on Cedar Court, and my father took me up the ladder ahead of him, which I later learned was itself a lesson. You put the green man where you can watch him. And he didn't hand me a hammer. He sat me down on that ridge and made me look 20 minutes at nothing at the roof, until I said to break the silence, "It's just shingles, Dad." And he said, "No. It's water. Everything you'll ever do up here is about water, where it wants to go, where it'll cheat, where it'll wait. The shingles are just the argument you're making against it." Then he pulled one course, showed me the flashing under a valley, hidden work, perfect work, done by a man 20 years dead, and he said, "See that? Nobody's seen that since Truman. That man kept this family dry from the grave. That's the job, Mikey. The job is what you do where nobody looks." I was 14, friend. I'd have followed him off the edge. I was on roofs summers at 14, running my own crew at 22, and I'll say this straight out. Every good thing in my hands my father put there. The trade, the eye, the code. That's not the part we fought about. Kingdoms don't fall over the trade. There's a silver dollar in my pocket tonight, and it's been in a Sullivan pocket since Eisenhower. Old Kowalczyk paid my father partly in silver his first year, and when Dad finished his apprenticeship, the old man gave him one back, said, "First honest dollar you ever earned me, keep it where you can feel it." My father carried it 40 years, and the day I ran my first crew solo, 22 years old, He flipped it to me across the shop, no ceremony, said, "Don't spend it on anything." I've carried it ever since, through everything I'm about to tell you, and I want you to remember it's there, riding in the pocket of a man at war with the fellow who flipped it to him. Families are like that, friend. The treasury and the war, same pair of pants. They fall over the succession. My mother's name was Helen, and she ran the office, the books, and the two of us, and I mean ran us, the way a dispatcher runs trucks. My whole boyhood, my father and I never once had a fight that finished, because my mother got between us at the first raised voice, rerouted him to the shop and me to the yard, and by supper the thing had lost its teeth. Every family that runs hot has somebody like that, a circuit breaker, a human fuse box, and the terrible thing about fuse boxes is you don't find out what they were worth until the day the surge comes and the box is gone. I'll show you the fuse box working once so you can measure what broke later. 1987, a warehouse job went sideways. A sub poured footings wrong and the schedule ate our whole June, and my father and I got into it in the shop about whose call had cost us. Both of us right about half of it, which is the most dangerous kind of fight there is. Voices went up. Men found reasons to be elsewhere. And my mother came out of the office with 2 envelopes, already made out, one in each hand, and she said, "Stanley, the Hendersons' estimate needs walking, and Michael, the lumberyard, misbilled us and I need it fought in person, and neither of these things can wait and neither of them is negotiable." And we went, friend. Both of us like schoolboys with hall passes. And by the time we got back, separately around 5, there was a pot roast going in the office crock pot, and she had us reviewing the warehouse recovery schedule together at her desk before either of us remembered we were furious. I asked her once, years on, how she always knew what to do with us. And she said, "Oh, honey, you two aren't complicated. You're the same man twice. You just each think the other one got the easier half of him." She died in the fall of 1993. Heart, quick in the office chair, with the payroll half done in front of her. And my father did his grieving the only way he knew, which was silently, on rooftops, and I did mine the same way, because I was his boy in every way that would turn out to matter, and neither of us said one true sentence to the other about the woman we'd both lost. The house had lost its operator. The line was down, and the two of us went on transmitting anyway, louder and louder into the static. 18 months later came the Lawson barn. I have to explain the bid because the bid is the war, and you can't understand 31 years of siege without the shot that started it. The Lawson place was the biggest dairy operation in the county, and in the spring of '95 they wanted the great barn re-roofed, 40 squares, steel over purlins, plus the house and 2 outbuildings. Biggest contract of the season, and beyond the money it was a flagship, the kind of job every builder drives past and takes note of, and Sullivan Roofing had done the Lawson since my grandfather's time. I was 33. I'd been running half the company's work for 5 years by then, and I'd been pushing my father towards standing seam steel for 3 of them, new brakes, new crimpers, training the crews proper, because I could read where the market was going the way he could read a sky. And Dad was slate and shingle to the marrow, and steel to him was fashion, and fashion to him was weakness. We'd been circling that argument politely since the funeral, which is to say, with nobody left to trip the breaker. I worked that Lawson estimate for 2 weeks. Nights at the kitchen table, my Patty asleep, coffee going cold, and friend, it was right. The material takeoff, the crew hours, the steel supplier's terms I'd negotiated myself, the margin. It was the best paper I ever built, and I know that's a strange thing to hear pride about, an estimate, but the men on this porch who have run work will know. A good estimate is the whole job seen in advance. Every course, every penetration, every day of weather laid down in numbers that don't lie. It was right. And my father, at the Wednesday meeting in front of the whole crew, in front of men I'd been bossing for 5 years, picked up my 2 weeks of paper, looked at the bottom line and said, "This is a boy's number for a man's roof." We're not bidding steel to the Lawsons. Cowixick did that barn in slate pattern asphalt in '51, and we'll do it honest or not at all. And he wrote his own number on the back of a supplier envelope, in pencil, in about 90 seconds, and dropped my estimate in the drawer where dead paper went, and said, "Next item." A boy's number for a man's roof, in front of the crew. 30 years I've had to think about that sentence, friend, and here's what I know now that I didn't know at 33. My father wasn't looking at my numbers. My father was looking at a company where his own boy had gotten so good that the old man's pencil was becoming a formality, 18 months after the only person who could referee the two of us went in the ground. He wasn't defending a bid. He was defending a kingdom he could feel tilting. It wasn't about steel. It was never about steel. But at 33, with the crew's eyes on my boots, all I heard was a boy's number, and something in me that had been holding its breath since my mother died just quietly quit breathing. I didn't yell. That's the strange part. Everyone expects the yelling. I gathered my paper out of the dead drawer, squared it on the table like my mother squaring payroll, and I said, "Then bid it your way, Dad. You'll lose it to Sullivan Brothers at 11-2 steel, because that's the century we're in now." And I walked out of the shop my grandfather built, past the red trucks, and I was so calm it frightened me. And Patty says I came home the color of drywall and didn't eat. The Lawsons went steel. Sullivan Brothers, 11,100. I was $90 off, friend. 31 years, and I never once got to be smug about those $90, because by the time the award was public I'd already done the unforgivable thing, the thing that turned a family fight into a county war. I'd opened my own shop. Sullivan Exteriors. Blue trucks because the red was his. 3 of Dad's crew came with me, which I told myself I hadn't recruited, and the county, which had watched Big Stan the way small counties watch big men, sorted itself into red jobs and blue jobs practically overnight, half of them just to have something to talk about at the diner. That first winter nearly finished me, and pride wouldn't let anybody know it, which is the Sullivan way of nearly finishing. I'd sunk everything into the blue trucks and the steel brakes, and the phone didn't ring the way my walking out swagger had promised Patty it would, because half the county was waiting to see if Big Stan's boy was a company or a tantrum. By February I was doing the math on the second mortgage at the kitchen table, same table the Lawson estimate got built on, and there's a symmetry in that I didn't enjoy. And the job that carried us through, friend, I want this on the record because the man's gone now too, came from Sullivan. The competition. The outfit that won the Lawson barn. Old Sullivan called me himself, said his crews were buried. He had a school gymnasium he couldn't crew till spring. Was I interested in taking it whole? Handed a drowning man a gymnasium, friend. Years later I asked him why, and he shrugged and said, "Your bid on the Lawson job was $90 off mine, kid. Anybody that close to right deserves to find out if he can run a company." I've thought about that a great deal since. A stranger read my number and staked me on it. My own father read the same number and filed it in the dead drawer. It's not that one man was better than the other, friend. It's that the stranger had nothing to lose by saying I was good. And my father, so I'm told, said exactly one public sentence about it ever, and the sentence was, "The boy does good work." And God help me, friend, when it got back to me, even that made me angry. The boy. 60 years old I'd be before I understood that in my father's mouth, in his grammar, that sentence was nearly a psalm. The work was the only church he ever attended, and he'd said, in front of witnesses, that mine was good. I heard the boy and threw the psalm away. 31 years. You want to know what a 31-year silence between 2 roofers in one county actually looks like? It looks like this. It looks like bidding against your own father maybe 40 times, and losing some and winning some, and learning to read his pencil from the outside, from the numbers alone, the way you track an animal you knew by heart. I could look at a bid sheet and tell you Big Stan's number before the envelope opened. He could do the same with mine, and I know he could, because for 31 years the two of us never once underbid each other into the mud the way the outfits from the city tried on both of us. There was a floor under that war, friend, a floor of respect neither of us would name, and we kept each other honest across a whole county without exchanging one word. The county built rules around us the way a river builds banks. General contractors learned, without anyone printing it, that you never invited both Sullivans to the same walkthrough. You staggered them like feuding relatives at a wake. The diner sorted itself, red booths by the window, blue at the counter. I'm not being poetic, ask anybody. That's just where the crews sat. When the young Hendricks girl got married, her folks having had a red roof and a blue garage both, the invitations went to both Sullivans, and both households sent regrets, independently, and the town enjoyed that for a month. And here's the strangest artifact of the whole Cold War. Twice, that I know of, some outfit from the city came in bidding storm work with fine print and gravel and tar tricks, preying on widows, and both times, the crooked bid got beat back by red and blue trucks bidding honest against it in what anyone with eyes could see was coordination, except no message ever passed. We just both knew. You can be estranged from a man and still be his ally against the barbarian's friend. Nations do it all the time. It's the dinner table they can't manage. It looks like the Methodist Church, 2003, when the steeple work came up, copper, the hardest bid of my life, and I won it, and spent the next 2.5 years doing the best work my hands have ever done or ever will. And the Sunday it was done, my foreman Chuck, who'd been Dad's man, once said, "Don't look now, but there's a red truck been parked across the road about an hour." And I didn't look. Of everything I regret, and it's a long list, you know my lists by now, the not looking is high up. He sat there an hour, friend. Then he drove home. It looks like both of us at Aunt Rose's funeral in 2008, opposite ends of a church basement, eating off matching paper plates, sorted by cousins like boxers into corners, and every relative in that room enjoying the drama a little, be honest. Funerals need entertainment too, and the two of us performing our silence like a liturgy we'd both memorized. It looks like the hailstorm of 2010, when the whole county went to tarps at once and every roofer for 100 miles worked 16-hour days for a month. And for one stretch in June, a red crew and a blue crew worked the same block of maple for 11 days. My father 73 and still walking ridgelines. Me across the street watching him out of the corner of my safety glasses. And the two crews got along fine, shared a water cooler even. The men enjoyed it, and the two Sullivans never crossed the double yellow line the whole 11 days. There's a photograph, friend. One of my men took it, both crews at lunch on opposite curbs, and the old man and me each sitting on our own tailgate, 40 feet apart, eating identical sandwiches, because Patty and whoever was feeding him that year had both packed ham and Swiss. And if you want to know what a fool's war looks like from God's altitude, it looks like two gray-haired men 40 feet apart eating the same sandwich. And it looks like the parking lot at Mercy in 2015, when word came through the trades that Big Stan had a bypass coming, and I drove to that hospital at 10 o'clock at night and sat in the visitor's lot for 2 hours, hands on the wheel, working out what I'd say, and drove home without going in. I've told you about my family and parking lots. Watching from parking lots is the Sullivan sacrament. We should put it on the trucks in Latin. He recovered fine. I got the updates the way I got all my father news for 31 years from Denny. And I have to tell you what the war cost the innocent, because every war bills the neutrals hardest. My Eric was 3 when the company split. He grew up in a county where half the trucks wore his last name in red and never once rode in one. 10 years old in my truck out of nowhere, the way kids drop the whole world in your lap at a stop sign, he said, "Dad, why does Grandpa Sullivan hate us?" And I gave him some machine shop sentence about grown-up business, and my boy looked out the window and said, "Tommy Riener plays checkers with his grandpa." And I gripped that wheel, friend, and I drove, because the honest answer was, "Your grandpa doesn't hate us, son. I don't know what we're doing, nobody's known for years, and there was no version of that a 10-year-old could carry." When Eric shipped out with the Guard, the county did one of those homecoming parades when the unit came back, flags on Main Street, and I learned only this spring, from Denny, that my father stood at the back of that crowd by the hardware store, 80 years old, and watched my son ride past on a flatbed and clapped and went home. Parking lots and back rows, friend. I've told you. It's the family sacrament. I owe you Denny. My brother, 3 years younger, and the war was hardest on him because Denny stayed. Stayed with Dad, ran his crews, then ran the office, then ran in every way but the letterhead, the whole Red Company, and every holiday for 3 decades my little brother did the diplomacy of a divided Berlin, Thanksgiving lunch at one house and supper at the other, carrying no messages because there were no messages, carrying instead the worst cargo, the updates. Dad's fine. Dad's slower. Dad sold the slate tools, finally. Dad asked what your Eric's doing now that he's out of the service. He asked, friend. For 31 years, by way of Denny, my father and I asked after each other like foreign ministers, and answered like weather reports, and Denny hauled it all back and forth twice a year and got thanked by neither government. He tried to end it once, my brother. 2012, the Knights of Columbus fish fry, and Denny, God love him, engineered it like a man planning a heist, told Dad one time, told me another, figuring to overlap us into a room with fried fish and witnesses and no exits that didn't require walking past each other. And it nearly worked, friend, that's the worst part. I came in the side door and saw the back of my father's head at a table, silver now, thinner than the head I'd been not speaking to in my mind all those years, because the man you feud with stays frozen at the age of the fight, and the real one goes on aging without your permission. And I stood there with my coat half off. And he turned, some draft told him, and we looked at each other across a church basement for about 4 seconds, first eyes in 17 years. And then both of us, friend, both of us, same motion, same second like the same man twice, turned and left by different doors. Denny sat down in the parking lot on somebody's bumper, my brother, a grown man who ran 40 employees. And when I came to find him, he said, "You didn't even try," and I said something about Dad being the one who, and Denny stood up and said the truest thing anybody said in all 31 years. He said, "Mike, he's not the one who anymore. Neither are you. There's no one left who remembers the who. There's just 2 old men doing an impression of a fight they can't even quote correctly." And he got in his truck. He didn't haul messages for a year after that, and we both felt the embargo, and neither of us said so. And there's one more account I have to enter before the Tuesday in April, and it's the one that still stops my breath a little. My granddaughter, Sarah, Eric's girl. She grew up on my knee and on my roofs in the office summers, a Sullivan to the bone, and at some point in her 20s, on a genealogy kick, she found her great-grandfather the way you'd find anybody now, in about 9 minutes, and being a generation unburdened by our liturgy, she simply went and knocked on his door. Didn't ask me. Didn't ask her father. Knocked on Big Stan's door, said, "I'm Sarah. I think I'm yours," and my father, 84 years old then, looked at her a long moment and said, "You've got Helen's chin," and let her in. 4 years, friend. For years she visited that old man every few weeks, told nobody in my house because, and she said this to me after, "Sitting right where you're sitting, Grandpa, the war was yours." I checked, and nobody had ever declared me a combatant. You can be furious if you want. I wasn't furious. I want that entered in the record too. When it all came out after, and I learned that for 4 years my father had been slipping my granddaughter $20 bills and teaching her cribbage and asking her, every visit, casual as a man checking a sky, "So, is the blue outfit keeping busy?" I didn't feel betrayed. I felt like a man who finds out there'd been a warm room in his house the whole winter, and he'd never opened the door. She told me the details in pieces, that summer after, doling them out the way you feed a man who's been starving, small portions so it doesn't kill him. How the cribbage board was Helen's, and he'd kept her pegs in a snuff tin. How he never once said a word against me, 4 years, not one. The worst he ever managed was, "Your grandfather was born cert, sweetheart, it's a Sullivan defect, we're all born certain and it skips nobody. And this one friend, this one I have to hand you whole." She used to show him my company's jobs on her phone. Blue truck work, finished roofs, posted by Eric for the business page. And Sarah said my father would take the phone in both hands, careful, like it was somebody's baby, and he'd pinch the screen and zoom in every time to the same places. The valleys, the chimney flashing, the step flashing along the dormers, the hidden work friend, the places where the water cheats. He was checking my work from a recliner through a screen the size of a playing card, 4 years running, and Sarah says every single time, he'd hand the phone back and say the same 2 words. Still dry. It was Sarah, of course, who was with him at the end. And it was Sarah's number I found out later that he had them dial from hospice so he could be walked through, step by step, at 89, weak as paper, how to make a call to a number that wasn't in his phone. My number, which he knew by heart, which he recited to her whole, area code and all, 31 years after the last time he'd dialed it. Tuesday afternoon, April. I was in my driveway with a ladder half off the rack and the phone went in my pocket and I pulled it out, and the screen said a number, no name, because I deleted the name 31 years ago in a parking lot rage I could take you to the exact gravel of. But friend, a roofer's memory for numbers. I knew it before the second ring. I stood there in my own driveway, 64 years old, a grandfather, a deacon, a man who has climbed onto strangers' roofs in lightning to keep promises other men made. And I watched that phone ring in my hand like it was hot, and I let it go. It stopped. The little badge came up. One new voicemail. I told myself I'd listen after supper. Then after the weekend. He knows how to reach me. I actually said that, "God forgive me," to Patty on this porch, with the badge sitting in my pocket like a coal. Thursday morning, Denny called. And you know, friend, you knew before I said it, same as I knew before Denny got 4 words out. That's the thing about a 31-year war. You always believe there's one more season to negotiate in. There is not. The armistice has a date already printed on it and nobody shows you the paper. I went to the funeral, stood front row with Denny, the 2 Sullivan boys and their gray heads, and half the county behind us, builders and ministers and the Lawson grandkids, and Reiner himself, past 80, who shook my hand and said, "Your old man was the only honest floor left in this trade, him and you, and didn't know he'd said anything remarkable." I helped carry my father. First thing we'd done together since 1995, and he had to be in a box for it. And I want you to sit with that sentence, because I wrote it on purpose and I've earned the right to say it plain. Denny asked me to say something at the service, and I couldn't, friend. I had to shake my head at my own brother in the funeral home hallway, because everything I had was 2 minutes and 11 seconds long, unplayed, sitting in my pocket the whole service like a stone. So the minister did his best with a man he'd known mostly by roof. But I'll tell you what happened at the graveside, because the trade said what the sun couldn't. It came on to rain during the interment, hard, out of nowhere, proper roofer's rain, and there were maybe 30 men from the trade there. Red crews and blue crews and Reiner's people all mixed, and not one of them moved for a car. 30 roofers stood in a downpour with their heads bare, getting soaked in honor of a man who'd spent 60 years keeping rain off this county. And Denny leaned to me under the tent and said, "Look at that," and I looked. And I said the only eulogy I managed that day. I said he'd have counted the ones who left. And Denny said there's nobody leaving. And there wasn't. And for 5 weeks after, the voicemail sat in my phone, unplayed. 2 minutes and 11 seconds, said the badge. I looked at it every day. I couldn't touch it, friend, and I'll tell you exactly why, because it's the truest thing I know about grief and pride and where they interlock. As long as that voicemail was unplayed, my father was still about to say something to me. There was still a message in transit. The war couldn't fully end, and neither could he, not while 2 minutes and 11 seconds of him sat there sealed. Playing it was the funeral I hadn't figured out how to attend. It was Sarah who ended the siege, the way she'd been quietly ending it for 4 years. She came out on a Sunday evening, sat with me right here, took the phone off the rail, held it out and said, "Grandpa." He practiced it. I sat with him while he wrote it out on the back of a menu and practiced it twice so he wouldn't waste your time. It's the last work he ever did. You of all people, don't leave a man's last work sitting in the weather. The last work he ever did. She knew the grammar to reach me in, friend. She's a Sullivan. So I pressed play. And I'm going to give it to you now, all 2 minutes and 11 seconds, word for word, the way I promised at the top of the evening. You'll hear it the way I hear it, an old man's voice, thin but level, a voice that had bossed rooftops for 60 years pacing itself off the back of a hospice menu. "Mike, it's your father. They tell me I'm short on time, so I'll keep to the point the way you always liked. The Lawson barn, 1995. Your number was right. I knew it by that Christmas. I've known it 31 years, and I let a roof cost me a son, and that's the worst arithmetic ever done in this family, and we've done some. The Methodist steeple. I sat across the road an hour. Finest copper work I ever saw in this county, and I trained the man who did it, so I'm bragging a little too. That's allowed. I'm dying, Mikey. Sarah's here. She's got Helen's chin. There's a box in the shop attic with your name on it marked estimates. Denny knows to leave it be. You don't owe me a call back, son. I didn't call to collect. I called to pay. It's the last bill on my books. And Mikey, the work was always good. Yours, mine, even the wars some days. A roof is a promise. I should have remembered the house under it is too. That's all. This is your dad." Click. He ran out of road before he ran out of message, I think. There was no goodbye. I've decided, after several hundred listens, that this is correct, that it belongs that way, because there are calls that shouldn't have goodbyes in them, calls that are meant to stay open like a line nobody hangs up, and this is the one call in my life I get to keep that way forever. I sat on this porch and listened to my father say your number was right. 31 years of Tuesdays too late and 2 days early. And friend, here's what I have to report from the far side of that moment, and I report it as plainly as I know how. Being right was worth nothing. Nothing. I'd have traded the $90, the steeple, the blue trucks, all of it, for one ham and Swiss eaten on the same curb. The voicemail didn't feel like victory, and it didn't feel like vindication. It felt like a man handing you the receipt for 31 years and you seeing, itemized at last, what you actually paid. The box was where he said, "Shop attic" over the office, dust of decades on everything but it, because Denny, I learned, had been ordered years ago to keep it dusted and keep it shut. And my brother, who has kept every hard order our father ever gave, had done both without once asking why. Estimates 1995, in grease pencil, in the block printing I'd know at the bottom of a lake. On top, my Lawson estimate. The original out of the dead drawer, 2 weeks of my nights, and on it in his pencil dated December of 95, a full reworking. He'd taken my takeoff apart line by line, checked the steel terms, the crew hours, all of it, and at the bottom, in the hand that wrote a boy's number on a supplier envelope, it said, "Checks out." M was right. Under that, 31 years of the war archived. Every clipping the county paper ever ran on a blue truck job, folded neat. The church steeple, photographed from across the road, 11 shots, dated. My ads annotated in pencil, good line this one, and he's low here, he'll learn, and he was right, I was, and I did. A copy of the bid abstract from every job we ever fought over, both our numbers, side by side, in 2 columns, like a man keeping score of a long game he was somehow both losing and proud of. And a page I had to sit down on a joist to hold, my mother's payroll sheet, the one from the office desk, October of '93, half done, her figures stopping mid-column in that round bookkeeper's hand and nothing written after. He'd kept the page where her handwriting stopped. Friend, 33 years, filed under estimates, which when you think about it is exactly what it was. And an envelope, small, business size, sealed with grease pencil on the front. It said Mike's margin, Lawson, 1995. Inside was $90, 4 20s of 5 and 5 ones, and I stood in that attic and understood the voicemail all the way down for the first time. I didn't call to collect, he said. I called to pay. He'd counted out the exact distance between our two numbers. The $90 I was off from Rayner's winning bid, the $90 of being almost exactly right, and he'd sealed it in an envelope some year I'll never know, waiting to be able to hand his son the difference. It's in a frame now, in the shop office, envelope and all, unspent. Don't spend it on anything, he told me once about a silver dollar. Some money's not for spending, friend. Some money is just love notarized. My Eric's service photo, the one that ran when the guard unit came home. Sarah's high school graduation program. He'd been at the graduation, friend. Back row, Denny confirmed it, gone before the caps came down. And at the bottom of the box, wrapped in a red shop rag heavy, the letters. Cast aluminum, worn red paint, ampersand, and 3 letters off the old sign, the original, the one that came down in the '80s when he went to the lit sign. And son. He'd kept them, through 2 shop moves and a bypass in 31 years, wrapped in a rag, under the evidence, like the foundation course under a whole roof of watching. I'm not going to tell you what I did in that attic. We don't perform our crying on this porch. I'll tell you it took a while, and that Denny stood at the bottom of the ladder the whole time and never once hurried me, because Sullivans know how to stand watch at the bottom of a ladder. It may be the thing we do best. Here's what came after, and then I'll let you go, because the after is the part you're owed. This spring, the 2 companies became one. It was the kids doing more than ours. Eric runs my side, and Denny's boy Paul runs the red side. And the 2 of them had been subbing work to each other quietly for years, the way the next generation always starts the treaty before the old one admits the war's over. Sullivan Brothers Roofing. The trucks are red, friend. I want it noted I gave on the trucks, and Patty says I gave suspiciously easy, and she's right, because the first time I saw Eric pull into my drive in a red truck I had to go check the gutters for no reason. And over the door of the shop, my grandfather's shop, where the lit sign hangs, we bolted the old aluminum letters back up, clean but not repainted, worn red, right under the new sign where they catch the evening sun. And sun. Plural now, if you read the whole building. The sign finally tells the truth. It just took it 70 years and 2 stubborn men to get the wording right. And the last thing, his own roof. My father's house, where Denny lives now, and it would have shamed him, the state of that roof, cobbler's children, you know how it goes. He'd been too proud to have his own crew up there fussing over him and too mule stubborn to hire it out. And I'd be cheating you if I skipped the phone call that came to the new company in May. Eric took it, came out of the office grinning like a man holding 4 aces, and handed me the cell. Young fellow on the line said his name was Lawson, said, "You probably know our barn, your family's bid on it once or twice." The steel from '95 had done its 30 years and done them well, but Hale had had its say, and the family was re-roofing, and the young man said, "My granddad always told us, whichever Sullivan's left standing, that's who does it next. Whichever Sullivan's left standing, friend." Well, it turned out to be all of us. Sullivan Brothers signed the Lawson barn this summer, 31 years after the bid that broke the family, and when the contract came back countersigned, Denny put it in a frame too, next to the envelope, and wrote the date under it. And under the date, because my brother has been saving up his one good line for 30 years, he wrote, "Bid accepted." So one Saturday in June, before Denny was awake, two crews showed up at dawn, red trucks and my old blue one, Eric and Paul and Sarah on the ground running it like her great-grandmother ran payroll, and I went up. 64 years old, Patty had opinions. I went up anyway, because there are jobs a man does with his own knees or not at all. And we stripped and re-roofed Big Stan Sullivan's house in one long day, architectural shingle, slate pattern, gray-green, the exact profile old Kowalczyk laid on the Lawson house in '51. Denny found the spec in the old books. I did the flashing myself. Every course of it right, especially where nobody will ever see it. Because the leak starts where you were sure it wouldn't, friend, in roofs and in families. My father taught me that, and I answered his voicemail the only way a Sullivan knows how to say the big things. Shingle by shingle, in the trade language, out loud. So that's the story. If you take one thing tonight from an old roofer, take this. Somewhere in your phone or in your drawer or in your chest, there's a message you're not playing, a number you're not answering because being right has you up on a ridgeline in a wind, too proud to come down. Come down. I'm telling you what it costs at the bottom of the ladder, to the dollar, itemized. I've seen the receipt. 31 years, and the whole war ended in 2 minutes and 11 seconds, which means it never needed to be longer than that, which means it could have ended any Tuesday of any one of those years, over one phone call, one sandwich, one curb. Answer the phone, friend. Even if it rings out, play the message. A man's last work shouldn't sit in the weather. It's evening here now. Red truck in the drive, Sarah's cribbage board on the rail. She skins me weekly. She learned from a master. The new roof over at Denny's held through last week's storm without a whimper. First big rain it's seen, and both of us stood in his yard in the wet like fools, watching it not leak. And the porch lights on. It always is. If this story found you somewhere quiet tonight, stay a while. There's a new one on this porch every week, and the light's on for you too. This has been the Porch Light. This story, like all stories told here, is an original work of fiction. Any resemblance to real persons is coincidental. Good night, friend. Drive safe going home.